a little residence there.
That's a
Yeah.
tangible thing.
Yeah, I'd like to call this meeting of the Willits City Council, April 12th, 2017 to order. And Sergeant Leaf, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Lois.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Present.
Strong.
Yes, present.
Orenstein.
I am here.
Krasinski.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Here. All right, public communication. The council welcomes public participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the council on the same subject matter, the mayor may request that a spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the city council which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the city council, commission, boards, agencies will not be prohibited. No action shall be taken. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak? Please. Oh. Okay. Hold on one sec, okay? I guess we need to amend the agenda.
Yes, so we have an off-agenda item tonight before you. It's to adopt a resolution declaring the city vacuum truck to be a surplus property pursuant to Willits Municipal Code, Section 3.08.080. And so we need a vote to add it to the agenda, and then we'll take it up later under my reports.
All right. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
So move. Second.
All right. Motion by Larry, seconded by Ron. All right. All those in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you.
So now we're up to public communication. Please step forward, state your name.
Hello, my name is Barbara Plaza. I am a new owner at 143 Franklin Avenue. Many people are aware of that now. And I have been getting too many complaints filed against me by my neighbor Bill Schaefer for frivolous, silly stuff. He has a surveillance camera on me, and I'm concerned about that because it's watching my every move. Now he's gone to the building code inspector, saying that I have pigs and roosters on my property. And the only way he can do that is by bringing the surveillance camera videos down and letting John Sherman see them. Here's my pig. My dog's 8-year-old toy that we play in my yard with. And if Bill Schaefer thinks that he can use these things against me, this is wrong. I'm a citizen in our town. And you know what's been going on for over 2 years, Gonzalez. And Adrian Moore does too. This has gone way out of hand, making false claims to the code enforcer. It needs to stop. Get a handle on it, please. I want to live on that property and build my house. I can't with Bill Schaefer calling on every little thing. Using surveillance cameras now. How would you all like to be under surveillance cameras and being told, oh, you can't play with your dog in the yard. Oh, I'm hearing roosters that are on another part of the property way out on Della. So how does he know this? It's because he's using surveillance cameras now against me. This is wrong. I'd like you to address that, please.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the public? Mr. Barksdale.
My name is Bill Barksdale. I have some handouts. Can you pass these down? Thanks. Thank you for letting me address you. I'm here to announce that there's going to be in Willits a free community emergency response training for specially arranged for the city of Willits and the community of Brook Trails. I recently took this training about a month ago, and it's 3 consecutive Saturdays. This is going to be April 29th, May 6th, and May 13th. Each session is an all-day session, and it helps, graduates can become eligible to become a member of a community emergency response team, of which Willits currently does not have one. The only one that exists right now is in Brook Trails. And the things that you'll learn are things such as survival skills, emergent triage in the field, how to make splints out of anything that's available, emergency wound attention, revival skills, how to rescue somebody that a heavy object has fallen on, like a wall or a timber or something like that. It helps you, it trains people how to work in a team for emergency, to respond to emergencies. When the government responders are likely to be overwhelmed, this helps citizens to respond. You can go into your neighborhood, which I'm starting to do now, and help to organize my neighbors to teach them how to identify those who are disabled or elderly who could be in their homes, and in an emergency it teaches you how to put together a grab-and-go kit so that you can always be prepared and not wait until the last minute, but know what should be in a kit that you can grab and take with you right away. I want to just mention that this is a special training that FEMA, it was out of the bounds of FEMA only allows 4 trainings per year in the county of Mendocino. I asked after I got the training to trainer Mike Carter if we could have one in Willits, and he said only if we found somebody who would donate, who would pay for the supplies, and we did find that person. And so now North Coast Opportunities, the County of Mendocino Emergency Response, and the City of Willits are now sponsoring this training, and the donor is paying for the supplies. So it's a special thing. So the information that I gave you tells you where to go to register. It'd be great if you guys would be on it, because then you would be able to lead responders and teams to, because you all come from different parts of town. But for those who are watching on television, you can register by calling 462-1959. 462-1959. I guess there is nobody watching on television tonight, too bad. But you might be able to put this in the newspaper. I'll give you guys flyers. And I would hope that as many of you who can, that we can get people to come to this training. It's limited to about 20 people. Thank you.
And Bill, just so you know, we do have TV land out
Oh, we
there.
do?
If you're a cable subscriber. And,
register.
and Bill, just so you're aware, we actually used to have a Willits CERT team. They ended up merging with Brook Trails as they lost members. Actually, in the past, as chief, I actually helped with some funding for them. So we've had a relationship, and we've met, both Adrian and I have met with Mike Carter and in the past as to how to work with them. So they keep their trailer parked over next to the police department.
Yeah, Mike is a great trainer, and it's a lot of fun. The training is great, so I need to tell you guys.
You know, actually, I took that training, I guess it was about 10 years ago, and it lasted 3 months or something. And, you know, when you talk about this whole training, it sounds kind of, you know, civil defense kind of stuff that you'll never have to use. But I think the reality is that what we were looking for is to create neighborhood groups that, you know, we do have emergencies. You know, we have we're an earthquake country, there's fires, things like that. And God forbid anything should happen in this town. It's good to know that the citizens are trained, that we can all step in, because if we have to wait for the first responders who are going to be real busy, we may have a long wait. So I think this is a good training, it's a good idea, and I support that. But I'm not going to do it again.
All right. And I guess at this point, public matters, we don't have any, so we go to consent, and we have a couple of things. City Council minutes for March 22nd, April 6th, disbursement journals for our warrants. Item C, approve City of Willits investment policy statement. Item D, approve updated illness injury, illness, and prevention plan for the city employees. And item E, ratify agreement for at-will employment of chief of police with Scott Warnock.
I would like to pull E, please.
Pull E,
Yeah, I would like to discuss 4C.
4C.
Yeah.
All right.
And I just wanted to note that the only minutes in the packet are the April 6th
Oh, the April
minutes.
6th, okay.
March 22nd is not there.
Oh, okay. All right, do I have a motion on items A, B, and D?
I'll make a motion.
All right, second? Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. All right. Unless we have any further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. All right, I guess we'll take up item C.
Okay, there's a few things on this that I would like to just discuss that sort of raise some questions for me. Paragraph 4A. Wait a minute. Under authorized investments. So I guess that would be page 3. Section 8, authorized investments. Anyway, it talks about 5% of the purchase value of all investments. All right, yeah. I'm not able to highlight this thing here, so I can't find it real fast. Yeah.
Right after number 4.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I wrote the notes, so,
You want me to read it?
yeah, go ahead.
It says investments detailed in items 5 through 10 are further restricted to 5% of the purchase value of all investments and cash accounts in any one issuer name. The total value invested in any one issuer shall not exceed 5% of the issuer's net worth.
Okay. Now, if you look at paragraph 6, wait a minute, this isn't, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong, okay. Okay, purchases of commercial paper may not exceed 25% of the city's portfolio. That sounds like a contradiction.
Well, it's not,
Is it 5% or 25?
it's 25% in commercial paper, but only 5% of in each individual account, right? So if we bought, we could buy 5 different 5% of commercial paper.
Okay, I see the paragraph I was looking at now. It says, investments detailed in items 5 through 10, which is the ones we just talked about, are further restricted to 5% of the purchase value of all investments and cash accounts, the portfolio. Oh, in any one issuer name. Okay, okay. Then again, time deposits should be less than 25% of the investment portfolio. I mean, I'm just wondering, is we're limiting, I mean, these percentages don't seem to agree in my first reading, so.
And Susie, I have a question. The way I understood it at our meeting the other day, this had already been approved by the council except for the strikeouts that, additions there that happened. So this had already been agreed to before?
Yeah, we did this a couple of years
But
ago.
it comes back annually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not inappropriate to.
No.
Some of these things, just to understand.
I agree.
So, are these discrepancies or not?
I don't believe they're discrepancies. I believe that, again, if we break it down, it's good. What we're trying to do is say, California Government Code Section 5360 gives specific guidelines how local governments can invest their money.
Yeah, no,
And we're adding to that.
Okay.
We're saying, plus, we don't want to do this. It has to be, we can't do more than this much. So we're taking the state requirements and we're adding to them. And I believe that what you're reading in the 5% is saying you can't have more than 5% in any one issuer.
name, that's the
Right.
key. Okay, maybe I missed that. So basically, all of the other paragraphs follow the same pattern. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question about it was, I don't believe we've had quarterly updates, which it says we're supposed to.
We have not.
Don't think we had any. for
We
quite a
haven't done
while.
this annually either, so this
Yeah.
would be it. And we weren't allowed to do anything with the investments that we currently have until this is approved. So until this is approved, we won't touch anything.
And I like the goal of all of those percentage things is to be diversified to some extent and not put all your eggs in one, too many eggs in one basket. I would like to see a policy in there, and it doesn't have to be right now, but to have some kind of criteria for inappropriate investments. For example, I would not like to see the city invested in fossil fuel development or in war industries or in industries that can be shown to have very discriminatory personnel policies or, you know, for example, when we had the South Africa divestment concerns. And so I'd like there to be at least a policy so that when we do see what we are invested in, if there are any red flags, we have some kind of.
So are you asking for Susie, I mean, we go with what we have today, but in the
Yes.
future, she comes back with a model policy? Because I'm sure, I think we chatted that there are policies like that out there.
Yes, I'm sure there are, and
I know that, and maybe you can explain what we actually have now, because it sounds like we're not doing any of those already. We're being very conservative, it sounds like.
We are.
The Finance Committee met, that's how I kind of have the jump on this, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we currently have $1.6 million in what they call corporate bonds. And we have everything from American Express, Boeing, Discover Bank, GE, JP Morgan,
United Airlines?
Boeing.
No.
GE.
Oracle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
GE, I believe,
and
does.
Merck. Now, the broker that we have been talking to is suggesting that we not buy any more bonds of this issue at all and only purchase CDs. They're safer, obviously, and you won't have any
Conflicts of, yeah. Because GE, I think, is it does a fair amount of nuclear.
CDs are safer than bonds?
yes.
Yeah,
They don't
but they
pay-
also don't
corporate
pay
bonds,
much.
corporate bonds.
Yeah, corporate
Huh.
bonds.
Yeah.
So I just wanted that to be out there as to review our current investments when we get a chance to do it with that in mind and maybe look at models at
So-
other places.
You're looking for social responsibility investment policy?
Mhm.
Okay.
There, some of the corporations that we have put money in, like, let's see, one of the banks, what was the name of the bank, Susie? The
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan and also Bowen and some of them, you know, I'm sure if you dug enough, you could find that they're investing in some of these things. But, I mean, on the surface, they're pretty good investments as far as being, you know, secure. But, you know, I'm sure that they step over in some of these things, but I don't know which ones they do. But, you know, we tried, Jerry and I tried to you know, do the best we could when, and these were things that had already been done at that particular time. And so what I'm trying to say is, you know, it's real easy to say, you know, that JP Morgan doesn't do anything, but, you know, in any of these things, but, you know, maybe they do, and how do we know? I mean, that's just, you know, I mean, it takes a lot of digging to find all these things. Boeing is another one. I mean, you know, or if you got into GE or a lot of them, you know, fringes of them, you know, we would do the very best that we can, but, you know, it would be very difficult to say, you know, well, there's not anybody that's dealing with any of the, what'd you call it, Adrian, social
responsibility.
social responsibilities.
Oh,
My-
Susan.
my-
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to also, before we get off, let you know that we have one account that's through January 2019. All of our other corporate issued bonds are expiring in 2018, so they're all very short term.
And just, so you know, the gentleman that, you can run his
Aaron
name. Aaron. What's,
Aaron Bonk.
Bonk. He basically said, look, you're kind of locked into some of these investments, but he's really pushing the security aspect of it and basically the CDs as basically the way we should be going. And so it probably would accomplish what you want to do, and obviously Susie has time to look up and see what's there. I know that there are companies or funds that if we did delve into the funds, that are geared to only look for high-yield, socially responsible investments. But it sounds like for the purposes of having our money really secure, they were basically guiding us with the CDs. So it didn't sound like we were gonna, it sounds like we're gonna eventually get out of the bond and corporate investment part of it, and that just seems to be best practices for municipalities.
Well, what do the CDs pay now? Typically? Can't be very much.
No, they're not, they're not.
Because I remember when we first did this several years ago, we got into bonds because we hadn't been in bonds, and our return, I believe, was like 0.25 or less than 0.25%, which was nothing. And remember, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens to, take care of the money that we're responsible for. So there is that balancing act. And like Larry pointed out, I think if you dig deeply enough, you're going to find some skeletons in everybody's closet. And you can set the bar to a point where we wouldn't invest in anything because everybody's involved somehow in something that can be construed as being not socially responsible to some degree.
Right.
So I think we need to, keep a level head about this.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not suggesting that we prematurely close any accounts that are already on the books, because that would not be fiscally responsible. And I also think that there are not NGOs, there are responsible organizations that do evaluate different, especially corporate papers. And if we're moving away from corporate papers, it may not be an issue, but I'd like to have there be some kind of guideline that we're encouraging and going in that direction and discouraging being in anything that we determine. But so that it's not, a hard and fast black and white thing. But if there's some egregious behavior by some corporations and we can avoid investing in them, that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah,
So
and again, it sounds like we're locked into some of the stuff we're in now till 2019,
Right.
but then the ideas, and it sounds like gives Susie the opportunity to do the research. And Aaron seemed very responsive to what we want. He obviously wants to make sure that we are being prudent with our money, and obviously the accounts he has are assigned to municipalities, government folks, as opposed to Ron going in there wanting to play the stock market like some people play the ponies. And again, we discussed this actually with Larry, me, with Aaron, and that in your personal life, you might be more aggressive in your finances and in your investments, but when it comes to the city's money, we obviously want to make sure at the end of the day that we don't go to Vegas with everybody's money here. So I think Susie, has some direction from us to look. So with that, do I have a motion to accept the investment policy?
I'll move.
I'll say.
Second.
Okay, motion by Larry, seconded, or motion by Ron, seconded by Larry. All right, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right, we are now, item E, ratify agreement for at-will employment of Chief of Police Scott Warren. Larry, we've got some.
Yes. First of all, I want to make a disclaimer that this has nothing to do with a person that is been put in the position of chief of police. It's nothing personal. I don't even know this person, and I certainly haven't had any conversation with him. But the procedure is the thing that has bothered me, and I got quite upset at the meeting that we had, a closed meeting about it. And I just think that there could have been a better way of doing it instead of, and I'm not saying that anything that he's not qualified, don't get me wrong about that, but the procedure really bothered me for the simple reason that Sabrina and I were at the interviews for the people that had applied at the particular time that we had, that we were trying to do this. And we had 2 applicants at that particular time. And Sabrina was on the Citizens Committee and I was on the Professional. And what I mean by the professionals were there was 2 or 3 chiefs from different cities. Fort Bragg was one from Healdsburg, another one from, that was a retired, that was from
Sausalito.
Sausalito. And the people in the civilian that Sabrina was on was the only one I really knew right offhand was Judge King, or I guess they still refer to him as Judge King. Anyhow, they interviewed, and we did not have any way that we asked any questions. We were just in there to listen to what was going on. And at the end, everybody got together and didn't make any kind of vote or anything of who that they wanted or didn't want. So that was pretty much where it was left as far as I was concerned. And maybe Sabrina knew more about it than I did. And then we go to a meeting and somebody brings up another name that no one, or not no one, I can't say that. I did not know anything about. And this was just brought up. And it was really a surprise to me that the council was not in anything to do with choosing the chief, in which I think is probably the second
Mr.
most.
Stransky, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're starting to talk about confidential closed session meetings, and we really are prohibited from doing that.
Okay. All right.
All right. Does anybody else want to speak on this? Adrian, I'll leave it with you then.
Thank you. So most of you know, certainly the council knows, that we embarked upon the recruitment process in November after the election results indicated that Mayor Gonzalez was going to be seated as a new council person. And we cast a broad net, did a statewide recruitment with a number of professional associations associated with law enforcement. We received a number of applications and then interviewed selected candidates. We, as Councilmember Stransky has noted, we had 2 panels, concurrent interview panels. One was a professional panel with other chiefs, and one was a community-based panel with representatives from our community, business community, the retired judge, and a representative from our Police Officers Association. I think the process was a very good process, very thorough. After those interviews were concluded, I conducted follow-up interviews with the candidates, and then went from there in the background process. That background process is mandated by California state, the post requirements. when it's a law enforcement position. And so we followed that process to the T. At the end of that process was when I was to make a decision, and did make a decision, and that decision was not able to go forward. And so then I had to explore my options about going back out again, or going with one of the other candidates that was interviewed, or a third option. At that point in time, I approached our interim chief to ask him if he would be interested in being a candidate for this position. And after he did some checking with PERS, determined that he would, and he submitted to me all of the documents that other candidates had submitted to me for consideration. So the reason why I took this to you in closed session, one, that's where we've been discussing the updates. Two, our municipal code lays out that the city manager, being the council's only employee, is then charged with hiring and making personnel decisions for all other employees. Obviously, this is a high-profile position, and I feel that not only did I listen to feedback from everybody in the community and on staff and on the council, but then I was really the only one that was privy to all of the information that came out of the backgrounds. And that information is confidential information that cannot be shared with you. So because of just the political climate that we face at times in the community, I felt it was necessary to take this information to you in closed session, which was the first time that you all heard about this. The objective at that point, aside from informing you of who I had selected, was to get approval on the contract. And that is the purview of the council to approve or not approve the contract.
I'm sorry, I should have, I dropped the ball. I do have some comments.
Okay. All right, let me see your paper.
If you're finished.
Not quite. So I stand behind my decision to select Scott Warnock 1,000%. He was not one of the initial candidates, but he is, in my mind, and I believe in many other minds, the right selection for this position. And he has been with the department for a number of years. He knows the department, he knows the community, he knows the city. He has a passion for this community. He is very well qualified for the position, and I think we are lucky to have somebody of his caliber to agree to serve as our police chief.
Okay, Ron, you're up.
Okay, thank you. You know, the whole thing comes down to job requirements, or whose job is what to do what. The city council is the board of directors for this corporation, which is the city of Willits. Our CEO is our city manager. The CEO, city manager, is the only employee, aside from the city attorney, that reports directly to the city council. Everybody else, every other city employee reports to the city manager, and that's clear. And it's a sensible arrangement, because we're part-timers. Our city manager is a full-time professional, and she's trained, and this is what she does for a living. That's what she does all day long. We have lives. We have other things to do. We show up a couple times a month. We attend meetings. We do a lot of reading. We are the policymakers. That is our role in this whole thing. We hire the city manager, and we put our faith and confidence in her to do her job. We cannot second guess her. If we do not like the job she's doing, we'll fire her. I mean, that's our prerogative. That's the way it works. But other than that, we have to leave her alone to do her job. Everybody works for her. I've been in management for my whole life, so I mean, I know what it's about. And there's no way that I'm going to dip down inside and start micromanaging the departments. That is not what I'm going to do. It's not my role. However, if I feel that our city manager is not doing what I feel she should be doing, we'll have conversations. But that's the way it has to be. I mean, can you imagine 5 city council members, each one of us with our own opinion about how a department should be run, dipping down and visiting Susie and telling her what to do, and then Madge comes the next day and tells her something else. You know, we can't do that stuff. That's not the way we do that. So that falls into hiring of all the employees as well. Since Adrian has been on board, she has hired all of the department heads, except for one who was in place, and then now the last holdout. And not once has the city council ever weighed in on her choices. Not once. We have never voted on who she selected. She's informed us, and that's been the end of it. And again, it's a matter of confidence and faith in her, in making good choices. And I have to say, over the 4 years that she has been the city manager, she's done an excellent job. I mean, we have probably the best staff that we've had in a long time. I have been on the council with 4 city managers. And I will say this to the camera and in public, that Adrian Moore is probably the best city manager I've ever served with. And I mean, the whole demeanor of the staff has improved immensely. The morale, the output, everything is just wonderful, and I feel good about that. I have absolute confidence. So if Adrian declares to us that she wants to hire a particular person to be the police chief, that works for me.
So I'd like to agree with what Ron has just been saying, that that I have incredible, absolute confidence in Adrian's good management that she has been bringing to the city. It's just really a pleasure to work with her, and I have great confidence in her choices and decisions. And so I would back whatever she had decided. But I also want to say that I think the process was very appropriate and straightforward. You put out a request for applicants, you review them. If your first choice isn't available, you look at what your other choices were. And in this case, somebody who she already knew about and who had really incredibly good qualifications that would make him the best candidate came forward. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, that's also an appropriate process, in addition to it being a very excellent choice. So I'm very pleased with this.
Okay. Does anybody else want to weigh in?
I'd just like to state that, yes, I was there as an observer. I didn't join in the conversation. I wasn't privy to any information before closed session. I was given the same information as everybody else in closed session, and I do believe that's a matter of record how we voted, and I did abstain, and I abstained for the record because I was ill, and I didn't feel that I could make that I should be making a judgment at the time. My abstention had nothing to do with whether or not I thought that we should approve the contract or not approve the contract. I just felt like it was a matter that I wasn't in the best frame of mind, so I just want to make sure that that's very clear.
And you stated that day, and so, well, I guess I'll take the final stab at this. And number one, I can tell you I'm probably the only one in the room that went through a similar process, not with the city of Willits, but I did go looking at one point, and it was run the same way as here. The citizen and the professional boards were advisory to the city manager in that process. And I can tell you one of the reasons I wanted to stay on board was Adrian as chief for as long as I did. And as a manager for over 13 years, I appreciated that I reported to the city manager and not to council members, because every 4 years, or actually technically every 2 years, somebody's either staying or going. And over the years, there have been some folks that I'm glad they weren't my boss. I'll be honest with you. I mean, and I'll tell you, it gives you kind of some comfort to know that you're answering to one person. And not that I didn't, as a manager, welcome questions from council members. I think everybody here, including some of the ward council members, had asked me questions over the years, and I think that was an appropriate role to answer those questions and clarify things. So that's, again, why I have confidence in Adrian, and the procedure was standard industry practice, and it seems to be that way. Unless you're in a strong mayor situation, I mean, like in San Francisco or someplace like that. And I guess if you're the mayor, you want a strong mayor process, but if you're not, then you maybe don't want that, so.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I know. And so under those, so I guess at this point, I'm gonna bring it back to a vote. Roll call, Dolores?
Was there a
Oh, and we need a
motion?
motion, sorry.
And then public comment.
Okay, sorry.
I will move the approval of the contract as proposed.
Oh,
We're going to move in second, and then we'll open
Yeah.
it for.
Thank you.
all right, so,
A second.
motion, all right, second. All those in, actually, no. So public comment?
I didn't sign up on my, can
Come up, state your name.
I, thank you very much.
Sorry.
My name's Tim Ellis. I was a officer here for many years. Most of you know me. And I'm not a big fan, to be honest with you. There is no transparency in this city right now. It's ugly. I'm not gonna apologize, it's ugly. We have 2 applicants. Yeah, some didn't work out, some did, but. And then we hired somebody who was a late applicant who got a little gift to come in higher on, or put their app in. I applied. Scott, no qualms about your abilities. The process is pissing me off. Okay, this city needs to look at some transparency right now, because you just made it ugly. No fault of Scott's. You guys made it ugly right now. So you might want to rethink this when you go to vote. Because Scott qualified? Yes, he is qualified. Is he the best choice? Who is the best choice? But you just made your own choice. And apparently, from listening to all of you tonight, it came from the city manager. She's an employee. Who runs the city? Might want to think of that, 5 of you. Mr. Stransky, apparently the attorney shut you down after the city manager whispered to him. He shut you down. There goes the transparency again. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. You're running this city. Try and run it right. Have a good night.
Anybody else from the public that would like to speak?
I just feel I have to respond to that. I've served with government at the county level, and I just want to say that I understand the city manager type of management. That's the kind of management that this city chose. As has already been said by this council, the council is here to be the council for the people. But the city manager is the employee of the council, and city manager, which is the CEO, the way it was put, and that's a good analogy, is the one who does manage and run the city. That's a huge responsibility, and I also have been here. I've been here for 30 years, and I've watched a number of city managers, and I have to agree that I feel that Adrian does the best job of any city manager I've seen, and we've had some good ones. I've gotten along with every city manager, but I do see in Adrian's style, I think she's very considerate. I think she really considers, and by that I mean I think she considers all angles. She looks at all aspects. She's got a staff that I think has good morale, and I think she does a great job. And there are certain things that are done in closed session because there are personal matters that you do not put out in public. I think that when Adrian did speak with the city attorney at this time to observe that what was done in closed session should stay in closed session is appropriate. When I was on the a county board, we also had to do things in closed session because there were things that had to be done privately that you don't want everybody, that is not everybody's business to consider. And although that may seem like a lack of transparency, I think that on personal matters and personnel matters, that's the way things are handled. If we want to have everybody's personal business out in public, then go on Facebook and do everything on Facebook and make that the way that you do government. But that's not the way that you do government. So I have a lot of confidence in this process, and I have a lot of confidence in Adrian, and I have confidence in this board. So thank you.
All right. Anybody else from the public? Otherwise, go ahead.
Real quick,
State your
Sergeant
name.
McCoy with the Sergeant McCoy with the PD. I'm also the president of the POA. On behalf of the POA, we support the decision to have Scott as our chief of police. That's it. Thank you.
All right, well, closing public comment at this point.
Do you want to say anything about what government code and laws for closed session?
There are very few areas where you can meet in closed session legally, and the Brown Act identifies those. And they are, for example, negotiating the purchase of real property, where if it became known what you were negotiating, it would ruin the process. Personnel decisions, the appointment, the discipline, the demotion of a city employee is an appropriate topic for a closed session discussion, and that's what this involved. And the Brown Act makes it a criminal act to disclose the contents of a closed session discussion that was properly noticed and set up for closed session. So we had it was perfectly appropriate to conduct a closed session to consider the appointment and the approval of this contract.
Okay. And, for the record, I was pleasantly surprised that we had another applicant. I wasn't part of the process. And I wanted to stay away. I think I've had folks ask me how I want to weigh in, and I tried not to, for the sake of propriety, since I held that position for so long. So, okay, at this point, I'm going to call for the vote. Dolores?
Councilmember Rodriguez? Because the position was open until an applicant was found, that's where I hang my hat on making the decision of yes. I'm voting yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Yes.
Jansky?
No.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right, motion carried. Again, congratulations, Scott.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll be able to work with everybody.
All right. So at this point, informational reports. Unless somebody wants to comment on those, I guess we'll be down to item 6, right to appeal. Persons who are dissatisfied with the decisions of the city council may have the right to review that decision by court. The city has adopted section 1094.6 of the Code of Civil Procedure, which generally limits to 90 days the time within which the decisions of the city boards and agencies may be judicially challenged. And commissions and agency, the Willits City Council meets concurrently as the Willits City Planning Commission and the City of Willits accessory agencies. Those aren't on there, so now we're on item 8, city manager reports and recommendations.
All right, so item 8A is to consider adoption of a resolution, that's the discussion and direction regarding proposed city council manual of procedures and protocols to replace in its entirety the city council's procedures for conducting city council meetings. So back on February 8th, we brought a discussion to the council regarding updating our procedures for conducting city council meetings, which were adopted in 2009. There were a few specific items we wanted to address, and then we heard some feedback from all of you on that. So the result of that discussion was council directed staff to bring back proposed amendments addressing the following: changing the public comment period from 5 minutes to 3 minutes per speaker. That's a practice that we've had in place, but it was never updated in the rules, and so it was just to be consistent there.
And Adrian, how long is that practice? It seems like, I can't even remember when we weren't doing 3 minutes.
I think it was goes back to when Paul was here. Yeah. Procedures for placing items on the agenda. The authority of the mayor and/or majority of members to establish, council members to establish ad hoc advisory committees. Formal adoption and inclusion of Rosenberg's Rules of Order in our procedures, and an adjournment time of 10:30. So all of those things were incorporated into these draft procedures. So what's before you is based on the model of Santa Rosa's, the city of Santa Rosa's procedures and protocols. It is broader than what we had in place before. What we still have in place actually, just pertains to conducting city council meetings, whereas these draft manual of procedures and protocols goes beyond that to address a number of other items. So we, for the most part, used what Santa Rosa had in place. We took out references that reference particular policies that they have in place, and made some other revisions just to make sure it fit what we were already doing in practice. So with that, we'd like to get your feedback and ultimately direction tonight as to how this should move forward or not.
Rob?
Yeah, I have a few things that I'd like to go over. On page 1, section 1, council meetings, paragraph F, attendance. The sentence says, it's kind of strange, maybe you can clarify it.
Sure.
The second sentence, if a council member is absent without council permission from all regular city council meetings for 30 days consecutively from the last regular meeting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What does the 30 days mean? I mean, you know, we meet twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
So is it 30 days of meetings?
No, it would be, I would interpret this to mean calendar days, but with you pointing this out, Santa Rosa, I'm sure, meets weekly.
Yeah.
And so in their case, if that's true that they meet weekly, that would be 4 or 5 meetings that a council member would miss.
Yeah. But we're only
Whereas in our
talking about
case,
2.
right.
So do we want to revise this somewhat, you know, just to,
I mean, this would be the equivalent of a job abandonment, basically, right? Either, for some reason, you know, obviously, if Ron was sick and he called me and said, hey, I'm going off to get some treatment, I'll be back in a month, then be, okay. Now, Ron's not MIA, he's
Right.
tending to, or he's going to a wedding in Australia or something, he's gonna be gone the whole month or something.
well, there's got to be some consequences for missing meetings, but I just want to make sure that
No, I get it.
it's a sensible time span.
Right.
And it does
you
say
know,
without council's permission. It
Right.
doesn't say the mayor, it didn't say without notifying the council. That caught my eye too.
Okay, section 3, presiding
Before we
officer.
move on, Ron, did you want to change that to 60 days, or?
No, I would change it to a specific number of meetings that are missed, not the calendar days.
How about 3?
You know, I don't know what that number would be.
Just keep in mind that later, right after that, it says, from any meetings that he or she attends. So it's not necessarily just council meetings, from
So-
the way I read it.
So Ron's on MSWA and council meetings and,
Yeah, we all have those, but we're talking about,
So I think.
well, it says from all regular council meetings. No, it's pretty specific. It's talking about regular council meetings that are missed, not the other committees. So I would suggest that we pick a number, not 30 days, pick a number of 2, 3, 4 missed meetings or whatever might be appropriate. I have no strong feeling about that.
Well, that's for the 5 of you to decide.
Yeah.
What
What if
anybody-
we modify that to say 60 days so that I mean, for us, that's 4 council meetings.
Well, why not just be specific with the number of meetings?
What if the council decides to hold a special meeting?
Yeah, so I
Or
think
other
60
regular.
days.
That-
This is regular
That
city
could,
council.
I'm just saying, it has the potential to move up the timeline, and the council, it would give the council more ability, honestly, to abuse and potentially push out a council member that they don't like. So out of fairness, I just think that a day, rather than a number of meetings, is probably,
Well, for example, in November and December, we only have one scheduled meeting in those months. So theoretically, if you miss that one meeting in November and in December, there's only 2 meetings you've missed, technically, you could have violated this section.
a good point, too.
That's why I'm thinking that we should pick a number, say 3 meetings, 4 meetings. The Board of Supervisors, when Supervisor Woodhouse missed a number of meetings, I think he missed so many months. I think that was the way it was, and it was decided that something had to happen. And what happened was he resigned, but there was still, it seemed like it was tied into months, but they meet weekly. So, I mean, that's all I'm saying, just because it's kind of ambiguous when you talk.
So what do you suggest?
I have a language that I was going to suggest. If a council member is absent without council permission from 3 consecutive regular city council meetings, his or her office becomes vacant. And that's, again, without permission. So if somebody needs a leave of absence and gets permission, that's different. But 3 consecutive meetings is usually a month and a half, and that's,
Yeah,
I
that
think,
should
more
be
than
enough.
enough.
And
Yeah.
the key word being regular.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's
okay.
the regularly scheduled ones.
Yeah, that works.
So if I'm going to be ill, or I am ill, then I have to come to the council and ask to be,
Sick?
To have that extended, yeah.
Yeah, no, you just.
okay, but,
Could that be in writing, I guess, is what you're
Yeah,
trying to
you would
do?
just notify the mayor.
okay.
Send an email.
And is this consecutive, or
It
is
says
it
yes.
over the whole?
From 3 consecutive city council meetings, 3
Consecutive,
regular.
so that means
Consecutive
one
in a
after.
row.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, hopefully, nobody's gonna like get really
I
I've never
think
seen
nasty on us and say they attend one and then they miss 3 and then they attend one. and they miss-
Yeah.
That's-
Well, I
I
mean,
don't
this-
think that will happen.
In reality, this is not an issue that we've had.
No.
But these are standardized rules
Right.
that many cities are using.
Yeah, in over 10 years on the council, I've never seen that. Okay, section 3, presiding officer,
Are we through with this?
we're through with that one, but I have more.
Yeah,
Okay.
comment on it. Why don't we resolve this just with a, like, straw vote that's, I propose that we add that, or change that language, and then when we adopt.
Is that the consensus of the council, to 3
Well,
consecutive regular
Yeah,
meetings?
that works.
All right, next one, Ron.
Okay, section 3, presiding
Are we going to vote
officer.
on this or not?
Well,
No, we're just getting a consecutive.
Larry might have a comment on it.
Oh, do you want to comment on that
I
part of
think it ought to be 4.
4?
Oh, okay. And
Yeah, okay, 4.
oh, 3.5.
Do I hear 5?
That's 2 months,
Yeah.
you know, that's 2 months, that's an awful lot. And as we've discovered with the Board of Soups, you know, when you're hobbling along with only 4.
Yeah, but I think that Sabrina raised a good issue, that if it happens to be the November,
Well, that's why 3 consecutive regular meetings would be 1 in November, 1 in one in December,
Yeah.
and 1 in January.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's almost 3 months worth of not having a full council to, and it is not, it hasn't been an issue because our council members have been very conscientious. But I think if you don't have permission and you don't have some disease that justifies you being gone or whatever, that it shouldn't be more than, I think it shouldn't be more than.
Is there
3.
consensus to make it 4 meetings instead of 3?
how
No
about,
preference.
Yeah, I mean,
you go with 4, Ron?
we don't want to be punitive about the thing either.
Well, again, this would be, this would be when the council member has not communicated.
Yeah, and there is that,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, so it's just a
They're
phone
just
call,
AWOL,
an email, or
yeah.
whatever, it's simple to do.
So do you care if it's 4 or 3?
I don't care.
Okay, and I'm good with, how about 4?
Okay.
Okay, Section 3,
So we changed it to 4. Is
Yeah,
that
4.
right?
paragraph B,
Section 4.
I'm sorry, Section 3, paragraph B, subparagraph 1, participation,
What page are you on?
on 4.
Page 4.
This is puzzling. The sentence says, "The presiding officer may, upon passing the gavel, move or second from the chair." I mean, if he passes the gavel, why is he moving or seconding from the chair?
This goes to protocol, and you'll see this with the Board of Supervisors. Usually the chair or the mayor in this case would not make a motion or second. They would let one of the colleagues do it. But in the event that a motion isn't forthcoming, the mayor could move or second, as the case may be. But the protocol is to pass the gavel in order to do that.
Gotcha.
So if that were happening and I figured I had to do a second or do something, then I would go, here you go, Larry. Okay,
Okay,
And you usually
good.
see it more with motions rather than seconds.
Okay, that was clear. Thank you for that. Okay, on page,
actually, well, can I,
Go ahead,
in the
yeah.
same section, and maybe there's another place. Adrian, you and I had talked about a mayor pro tem,
Mhm.
and is that addressed here, and maybe I missed it?
It is. They don't call it a pro tem, but they do address the need for having a presiding officer in the event that either the mayor or the vice mayor is not available.
Because I think the example we had was, and we talked about once, if I'm on vacation and I go to Larry, hey, I'm gonna miss January's meeting, he goes, well, I'm going to a wedding, I'm not gonna be here. And maybe we don't have a meeting in December, a second meeting in December, but in the event of a special council meeting for some sort of emergency declaration, having somebody that can do that. So it's one of those, I come to Larry, he can't as the vice mayor, and then we would then select somebody in the event they would serve the function of presiding.
Correct.
Okay.
So usually you see a mayor pro tem come into play when there's just a mayor and not a vice mayor on a council. In this case, we have both of those positions, so this talks about having a presiding officer in the absence of either the mayor or the vice mayor. And in the event of an emergency situation where the mayor and the vice mayor can't get to the meeting or call in, then the 3 remaining council members would appoint a presiding officer amongst them.
Oh, okay.
So-
And the scenario was that, or maybe it's not that I'm on vacation, maybe it's, there's an earthquake and the building fell on me and Larry's incapacitated and, all of this
But
is,
that example that I was questioning had nothing to do with you being absent.
Yeah.
It had to do with how do you pass the gavel and then make a motion? And
oh, I know, I just was looking for a
Yeah,
spot to
okay.
put that as.
So Ukiah has a mayor pro tem, I believe, not a vice mayor. I think some of the cities do. Is
Correct.
that just their way of calling it, or they do
Yeah.
not have a permanent?
You can go either way with it.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Okay, going to page 10 and 11, voting. Now, in paragraph A, let me see, it looks like, let's say the second paragraph, motions may be passed by a simple majority of the members present at a properly quorumed meeting. 3 votes required if only 4 members are present. And that raises the question that we seem to raise all the time. If there's only 4 people, 4 council members present at the meeting, or 3 council members present at the meeting, we have a quorum.
Yes.
But what constitutes a, the ability to pass or reject something?
A
Is
simple-
it the majority of the people present?
Yes.
Or a majority of the quorum of the council?
As it says right here, a simple majority of the members present at a properly quorumed meeting. So if you have 3 members, you have a quorum to hold the meeting, and for a motion to pass, you would need a simple majority of those present. So
Unless the motion is for a resolution or an ordinance or to pay a claim of money, That requires 3 affirmative votes.
Okay, so maybe that section in parentheses that said 3 votes required if only 4 members present is a little misleading.
No, it's totally.
Because it
accurate.
seems to contradict what the first sentence. The first sentence puts no
No,
limit.
it says unless otherwise required by the city ordinance or state law. And
That's the boilerplate right there.
Yeah.
So what, I could change that example and add to it, put 2 votes if three members are present, or 3 votes if 4 members are present.
Or a simpler way to say it would be a majority of those present.
But the concern is that if you have 4 people present and it's a 2-2 vote, you fail to pass.
Well, there is always that.
And this makes that real clear. You have to have, if there's 4 members present, a majority of 4 has to be more than 2. Has to be 3.
Yeah, of course, but that's not the issue. The issue is if you have 3 members,
And it's 2.
what is the majority?
2.
Okay, but we've had this question many times, and I've had it on civil service. And the question was, actually, it depends on who you talk to, on the attorney that answers the question. And I've heard it stated both ways, that it has to be a majority of the full body, which would be 3, or a majority of those who are present, which could be 2.
So the purpose of adopting these rules is so that we have them in place. You're deciding that this is the way it's going to be.
Okay, well, that's what I just want to clarify. I'm not questioning it, I just want to clarify that what we're saying is the simple majority of the members present, end of sentence.
Yes.
So, but again, the section in the parenthesis, I don't know, adds a little confusion to it
I will take that out.
by using numbers. I mean, I think it's fair and it's clear enough that the majority present, that's, that works.
Okay.
Okay, paragraph C, failure to vote on the same page. This has always been a bit of a thorn in my side, I guess. It starts out okay, in my estimation. Every member should vote unless disqualified for legal cause. That makes sense. Self-disqualification without legal cause which results in a tie vote shall be avoided as thwarting council action. Again, that makes sense, but it's kind of wishy-washy. Nothing personal. But no council member shall be forced to vote. Now, I've been on boards where board members or commission members have abstained. And the reason they're abstaining, quite frankly, is because they can't make up their minds. So you have in here, a council member who abstains shall in effect consent. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's very clear.
No. I thought I read in here somewhere that if a council member abstains, they have to give you a reason.
I
You see-
think this paragraph is so perfectly written
No,
that
well,
covers that.
it is clear, but I don't like it. I don't agree with it, because, see, the thing is this, we're elected to serve the people. That's all we do. We sit up here and we make decisions and we vote on things. And in my mind, if we're called on to vote on something, to make a decision, to make a policy, and I say, I don't want to participate in this thing, I can't make up my mind, I'm failing. I'm not doing my job. Sometimes you got to suck it up. We always make decisions, and sometimes we don't like the decisions we have to make. They're hard decisions, but that's what we're getting the big bucks for. So, to me, it seems like we're failing in our duty to the public when we hide behind an abstention. So I would like to see something like, if you're going to abstain, and again, I haven't seen it on this body. Any abstentions, in my mind, have been completely legitimate. I'm not saying that this is our body, but if we're writing the rules, I think it's a good idea, because we're not always going to be us. And I think it's got to be the sort of thing that, even though we're saying that no council member shall be forced to vote, why not?
Would you like that phrase taken out? You just put a
Yeah.
period after the word action.
Yeah.
And so it then would say that, this shall be avoided, abstaining shall be avoided, the supporting council action, period.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say that I totally disagree, and a perfect example would be, I informed the council I had 102 fever, I broke out in a fever. Before we came to session, I was prepared for what I thought was gonna happen at the meeting. Some new information came to light that was presented in closed session, which I didn't have time to process prior to having a fever. It wasn't ethically responsible of me to make a decision because I didn't believe that I could make a clear decision based on the new information. And I feel like it was my ethical responsibility at that time to abstain unless the council wanted to bring the issue up at a later time.
I agree.
So I don't want to be forced.
No, I actually-
But there are times when, that wasn't a legal case.
It was not, it wasn't
But
just,
it was an ethical decision.
beyond being ethical, it was a legal basis. If you have 102 temperature, you probably shouldn't have been there,
Well-
you know?
No, I mean, I absolutely agree with what you said, no question about it. And I did say also that if someone is going to abstain, there needs to be a reason. That is certainly a reason, no question about it. That is, I'm not saying we should never abstain. What I am saying is that abstentions need to be for legitimate reason, because otherwise it looks like you're dodging your
Right,
responsibility.
but the example that was just recited was a legitimate reason.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
legal,
That's what I
it was
said.
ethical,
Yeah.
it was good
Yeah, that's what I
cause
said.
to
I have no
abstain.
argument with that. That is perfectly fine. But I'm just saying, if someone's, and what I've seen in other organizations, not this one, when someone abstains, I won't go into that.
I can see
Crazy.
how there would be an abuse for it, I get it, we just gotta be careful the way.
Yeah, of course. But I think you should put in something about abstentions should be accompanied or prefaced by a
Reason.
or something.
Good cause.
Good call. Madge, and then Larry.
I think that the way this is written is absolutely the way it should be written, because it says that we really want to avoid abstentions, just because, well, this is kind of an uncomfortable decision I have to make, I'll abstain. It makes it real clear that you don't want to do that. That is shirking your responsibility. But on the other hand, you might have some personal reason why you really don't want to vote on a particular thing, that it's like a family, issue or something, that isn't a direct conflict of interest. I don't think we can force fellow council members to vote if they say, on this issue, I need to abstain. And I don't have a legal reason to abstain. So I think the way it's written is perfect. It pushes everybody to do their responsibility and to vote on issues. And it says if you abstain, then you are turning that responsibility over to the others. To me, I don't want to take that out, because I think it is our right to be able to not vote if there's a situation where we just really feel uncomfortable.
So what would be difficult about saying, I want to abstain for a personal reason, but it's a genuine reason or something like that? And we would have enough respect for you to say, okay, fine.
Do it. Larry's next.
Who is going to make the determination that it's a legitimate, not legitimate? I think that and I've only been on this council. I've never been on another council or anything else. But if out of the five of us, out of every one of you said, I can't vote on this because I want to abstain, I take them at their word, that they really have a good, because we're not anybody that backs down from something if you have a thought or an idea. And I think that, I just can't believe that you guys are going over this. If I wanted to abstain on something, you'd have to take me at my word that it was very important to me not to vote on it.
So you're kind of agreeing with Madge, so I get.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I guess, I see what you're saying, Ron, but I guess I kind of feel the same way because in using the Sabrina's example, she went over and above to explain why, because sometimes, I mean, this conflict of interest thing, obviously it has to do with money most of the time, you know, they're gonna pave my street and it's gonna raise the value or something to my property, or the city's gonna enter into contract with my company kind of thing, but absent that, it may be my brother may have a contract with the city. I'm not personally gonna make any money off of it, but I may feel ethically that I'm gonna abstain if that happens, and for the sake of propriety. And I may state it, you know, just so that, hey, I don't want anybody to say that. So I kind of am agreeing with Larry and Madge that I think everybody up here will speak up and say why they can't and move on. And then if we end up, I mean, I've seen it over the years where there's not enough votes one way or the other, but usually it wasn't because of abstentions.
Well, understand, I'm not talking about specific people. I'm
No,
not
no,
talking-
and I get that,
Well,
Ron.
no, I mean, I'm not talking about these 5 people sitting here. We're setting these rules for the next 20 years or 10 years or whatever. And a rule is a rule that's supposed to cover universal situations. You know, let's leave our personalities out of it. And, you know, I think it's perfectly appropriate for someone, if they're going to abstain, just make a statement. You know, we don't need an affidavit from them or a doctor's report or anything like that. All they have to say is, you know, I'm not feeling well, I really don't feel up to it. That's fine, you know, that's good enough for me. And I think for everybody else here.
It sounds like the consensus is to keep it the way
Fine,
it is.
all right, I don't care.
I think we better,
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, do you have any?
Yeah, I have some more. On section, yeah, page 14, page 16, sorry. Paragraph D, talking about the seating arrangements. Now, this is new to me because in.
What is it? Is it C? you
D.
say?
D, as in dog. The mayor shall establish a dais seating arrangement of the council members. Now, in my 10.5 years of being on the council, plus X number of years in observing before I was on the council, there is a protocol. You have the mayor sits in the center, the vice mayor sits to his or her left, the most senior member sits to the mayor's right, and then they sit in descending order. That's the way it's always been. You know, no hassle, nobody has to make a decision or.
Well, I think that in general, I mean, if we wanted to really lock it down, but I guess I'll give you an example. Maybe Larry comes to me and Adrian and says, I can't hear out of this here or vice versa. I would do better if I were here. I don't think it's the end of the world if he's here versus here without having to bring it back to the council. I mean, it gives you some latitude. I mean, that's just my thought.
I agree.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, then the other thing
Were you on
is,
flash?
If you wanted boys or old boys.
the last one is something that, Adrian, you mentioned it when you introduced this. It's the council committees. Now, if you all
What
recall,
page?
well, 18.
Time out, Ron, where are you?
Page 18.
18.
Thank you.
Well, the thing is, what I'm going to talk about is not there, and that was my issue. You will recall that this whole exercise of changing these procedures began about 9 months ago when the mayor at the time refused to appoint an ad hoc committee. And 4 council members insisted that the mayor form that committee, and the mayor said, no, I'm not going to form the committee. That's what triggered the need to revisit these procedures. And, you know, we talked about it, but I don't see it in here. I don't see anything in here. In fact, the last set of procedures did actually mention that the mayor would appoint the ad hoc committees. This doesn't even say that.
Is it somewhere else?
I think it is somewhere else.
I didn't see it.
Because
Maybe
I think,
missed it.
because I think it was a simple majority, right? I think we had.
No, it wasn't a matter of a simple, well, that's in the makeup of the committee. I'm talking about the fact that
Yes.
the mayor absolutely refused to appoint a committee. And there was almost a revolution right here on the
I
dais.
believe it was in the previous draft, so.
It was.
So it's either in here someplace and just not in that section, or
This
it got
is where
left
it
out.
should be.
Good point. We need to
Yeah.
clarify that.
Okay.
Because.
So would that be item
just-
E
just to
under that
give you-
section?
Just to give you the heads up, and I believe when we did discuss this at the time, the consensus was that, the mayor does appoint ad hoc committees. However, if the mayor, doesn't want to appoint a committee, the majority of the council can force the issue.
It
Something
was,
in that order.
the draft, it was in the previous
I
draft.
seem to remember that.
And we
Yeah,
talked
yeah.
about
I remember
that
that.
at least one person, if you have an ad hoc committee of two, and it's decided by a majority of the council, but there's a dissenting group, that there should be representation from both.
No,
right?
that.
Well, it was because you wouldn't want to, like, let's say there was a 3-2 vote that we need an ad hoc committee for X, and the mayor appointed the two that didn't want to have a committee.
Okay, right.
So it was in that draft that we would
Yeah,
make sure that there was at least one.
It's a two-part thing.
Yeah.
But the key,
And I
in
remember
my
it
mind,
was
was the
written.
fact that we can't not appoint a committee if the council wants a committee to be appointed.
Yes,
That was the
it
key.
was there before.
What page is that on?
Thank you for
No,
catching
it's-
that.
Yeah.
It's not there.
No.
Yeah, it would be.
I'm not finding it.
I think there's-
Yeah.
I think they
I woke
put
up
it in the
last
right
night, I
idea.
should have read the whole
Yeah.
thing, I realized I didn't see it.
Okay, I think they've got direction to include that probably under E, under the committees.
Okay,
Anything else, Ron, or?
No, that's good, so I guess we'll have to,
do we
This
need to
wasn't
vote, or
scheduled
just
for adoption tonight,
Okay.
just
Just
discussion
direction,
and direction.
Okay.
nice job.
let's not
anyway.
discuss it next time. Let's just vote.
I guess, Adrian, you're still on, so.
Okay, so let's move to the off-agenda item. This is to adopt a resolution declaring the city vac truck to be surplus property pursuant to Willits Municipal Code, Section 3.08.080. So at the staff level, we've been, one of the things we've been trying to accomplish this year is to get an inventory of surplus equipment. And so staff has been working on that, but it's not been completed yet. And so, but when it is, we will bring that to the council to adopt, have you consider adoption of a resolution declaring the list of the property as surplus property, and which then can be disposed of or donated or sold. However, we recently were contacted by a contractor, local contractor, who has his own vac truck and had some issues with it. So he has a need for emergency repair, and he inquired about our vac truck that he knows firsthand is not in use.
So for the purposes of the public, everybody, there's a year description of this vac truck that we're talking about.
Yes, it is
1994.
It's on the back page.
Ford 3-axle vacuum truck. And we use it, or did use it, for the purpose of vacuuming sanitary sewer lines. So this particular truck has not been used in many years. We actually have a newer truck that we use, and it's become obsolete because, in part, because of emission standards that would be too costly to put into place. So the reason why we're bringing just this one piece of property to you tonight is so we can declare it surplus property and sell the equipment to the contractor so he can use the parts off of it to do the emergency repair on his equipment.
I will move approval of the
I
requested
second that.
resolution.
Before we vote, I just have one question. Is there some guidelines on how much you can accept for this, for a piece of surplus property?
Not really. We're required to get council approval by resolution for any property that we think has a value exceeding $2,500. Here, a contractor's offered to pay $10,000, and so we're before you to obtain approval. But how our code reads is that the city manager is the purchasing agent, and she's vested with the authority of disposing of all surplus property, selling it, trading it, disposing of it in a manner that best serves the needs of the city. It's pretty general. So, you know, obviously her objective is to sell it for a good price.
So there's no legal requirement that we get, you know, the best possible price, you know, get the blue book value or whatever, go out for competitive bids. This is in your best judgment, the amount of money.
Right. When we come back to you with a full list, we'll have a recommendation or at least a report on how we plan to deal with that surplus property. Some of it might be slated for, you know, demolition. Some might be slated for donations to local organizations. It just depends on the property and the condition that it's in.
We're not required to have a certain.
No.
Okay, good, thanks.
So one more question. The money we get from this, would it go into the enterprise account or would it go to the general fund?
To the enterprise account under, as miscellaneous revenue.
So it was bought by the enterprise?
Right.
Okay. So we have a motion?
We've already done the motion. in a
Yes,
second.
yeah, so, all right. Roll call vote?
Was there
Public
any-
comment?
Oh, you're right, thank you. Public comment? Hearing none? Roll call?
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Yeah.
Trustee?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right.
Nothing further at this point.
I have a question about putting on the agenda. I haven't been on top of this, but I know that Jim Wood has been proposing legislation that was in the paper about some kinds of grant funds being available to compensate for losses due to the bypass. And we haven't had it on our agenda, but it seems like we should definitely.
It is on the agenda tonight for
It
a
is?
report out under council member reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Didn't know it was on the agenda.
All right, anything more from administration? If not,
Oh, I
Jim?
have, are we under administration 9A? I just wanted to report that today I received the final signature pages from Pepsi and the Willits Trust and Numo Abex, Pepsi's predecessor who owned the Remco property, approving a negotiated agreement for them to make a one-time lump sum payment to the city for our future, our final oversight and maintenance costs. For years, they've been paying a monthly sum to the city that ended December, and Pepsi very much wanted to get out from under the obligation of paying a monthly sum and proposed paying a one-time lump sum, because basically our work has dwindled down. There's nothing much going on there from the city's perspective any longer. We're not incurring a lot of attorney fees, and probably the one big thing that we're looking at is in a couple of years when the site is sufficiently cleaned up and the water board concurs that it is, then we'll be before the judge of the federal court to terminate the consent decree and to dissolve the Willits Remediation Trust and to end the whole court participation of the trust. And we'll have some attorney fees in connection with that process, but we don't anticipate much more beyond that except for monitoring the progress of the cleanup. So anyway, at our next council meeting, I should have that agreement before you so that you will hopefully approve of it and we can get that payment.
So on that subject, there was a couple of other little items. Number one, there was a sum of money that Pepsi was going to pay to the city, I believe $30,000, to do another legal, I forget what it was.
There were, yeah, we paid that. We received the money from
received that
them
money.
incrementally over about a 3-month period. It was,
Okay.
we had some outstanding attorney fees from Mr. Block of about
Right,
$30,000.
that was the key to us signing the agreement, releasing them from.
Right.
Okay, and then there was this other, the final agreement, I'm not sure what we call it, with Pepsi, where we finalized all this stuff, was that they are still going to finance whatever cleanup has to go on and monitoring into the future. And what you just talked about does not relate to that. That's a separate thing, correct?
Correct. The city won't have any obligation to participate in the cleanup of the property. Pepsi it remains obligated to do so.
Okay.
We're just talking about the city's continuing oversight and management of the cleanup effort, which we think will be completed in about 2 or 3 years.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah. Son of a gun, we were gonna do it.
Susie, do you have anything?
I do. I just received our draft copy of the audit just right as I'm walking in, so I haven't reviewed it yet. But I'm hoping to get the auditors here within the next few meetings so that they can present the audit to you. I'm gearing up for budget and we'll be attending a REMIF meeting next week where we will find out what our health costs are going to be for the next fiscal year. It's looking like it's going to be good though, like 2.5% increase. So that's very favorable and something that we haven't seen in a while. So that's a good thing and we're happy about that. And as soon as we have the audit wrapped up, we'll start the cost allocation report and then we'll circle around and start again.
I was having a conversation with Adrian a while back about the, let's call it the business climate in town. And up until now, we've been using the reports that you've received on the sales tax from the state. And they've come in quarterly, I believe, but like, what, a 3-month or a 6-month lag?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lag of about five.
But I also learned that there is this thing, the city, the business license tax,
Right.
which is reported directly to the city.
Mhm.
And isn't that more up to date?
Yes. That goes off of the businesses reporting to us, but they're not required to actually put in their exact amount. They're required to say,
It's a range.
yeah.
How big a range is the range?
It's a pretty good size.
So it's something that we really can't nail down and say that our business is this, it could be this. You know, that kind of plus or minus. Is that what you're saying?
What about the fact that on the quarterly reports to the city, it asks for your gross sales, and there isn't a computation for a breakdown which shows whether or not which goods were taxable, which I think is important. You know, for example, at the copy and shipping center, our gross sales may be one number, but when you're
Taxable.
providing services, there's that part of it's not taxable.
Yeah.
And so when you break it down and you report it to the state, it's different than the number that you're really gonna get from the city. So I think you gotta be careful that you could be overestimating if you're using just the city's numbers.
Well, actually, that's true, but that's actually even better for what I'm thinking, because what we're looking for, at least what I'm looking for, is the impact of the bypass on our local economy. And it's been like, 6 months, I believe, that it's been open. And we're hearing stories that it's good, it's bad, people are hurting or not. If we could get a fairly up-to-date number of gross sales, taxable, untaxable, whatever, the whole bit, and compare them to next year, same time, I think that might give us some kind of an ongoing, pretty good update how we are, instead of having to wait until June to get the next report. Could we do something like that, Suzanne? I'm asking you.
Well.
Through, I can't talk to her directly.
How doable is that and how reasonable it is considering all the other things?
Well, I
that-
think you're gonna have timing issues, they're gonna be quarterly reports, they're not gonna say, they're gonna
Yeah.
typically report, this is how much I owe.
Okay, but if it's plus or minus 20%, or, I don't know that it's that important to be, dead on. Just, we have this uncertainty in the town that people don't really,
But
people
plus-
have the sense that we're dying here.
plus or minus 20%.
Yeah, you're right. But I just threw out the number. It could be a lot less.
Larry has.
There's another thing too, is that Bruce was really hot on this, but I'm pretty hot on it also. I don't think that ought to be published, that, how much I make or how much my business is or whatever. We pay the thing to the city, but that's not something that you could come in and at the city and say, how much is Kimberly's jewelry making? I mean, you can't do that.
No, I'm not interested in knowing how much you're making or Sabrina's making. That's not the point. I'm looking for total numbers, and I think that's what we need to look at.
But I think your sales are going to be high.
So we're what?
They're going to show high, because you have a range, and so let's say the range is $20,000 to $40,000. If you made that this quarter, you pay $400. I don't know if that's it. I'm just making numbers.
Right.
So they pay $400. So what number are we going to take? The middle? We're probably going to take the high one, right? And now,
Well, we could take the middle. And I mean, another way to do it is to compare it with the same numbers from last year. You'll see the same range. I mean, I'm not, I don't know that it would be that
that's
difficult.
a lot of work to go through.
Well, I mean, you would have totals. And I'm sure you have totals that you could see that in this past quarter, our city businesses have earned a range of, $1 million to $2 million or $1.5 million, whatever the range is. And you compare that number to the same period last year, and this gives you an indication. The difference could be attributed to the bypass.
I could tell
think it's
you
all
if our
we need.
business license rate or the fees, the revenue is the same this quarter as it was last quarter.
Yeah, that's the other way to do it.
I could do totals like
Yeah.
that, and that I could do. And
Yeah, just an indication, because like I'm saying, we're hearing so much that doom and gloom. Maybe it is doom and gloom, I don't know.
Well, I think you're onto something, except that going back and calculating, I wouldn't want to see her spend her time that way, whereas the idea of just taking the total amount of fees for the year and then doing comparison is essentially the same thing without the detail.
Yeah, whatever works.
But the
Yeah.
quarter, but do it in quarters, so that we would be comparing the first quarter of 2017 with the first quarter of 2016. And so there's really only 2 quarters that would be affected directly by the bypass right now, would be the fourth quarter of 2016, only half of which was, or roughly 2/3 of which was with the bypass, and then the first quarter. But I'd like, if we just have that, that's pretty simple, just.
Yeah, just something to know.
The first quarter versus the first quarter of last year. That's all we're gonna have that's really comparable, and then we wait for the sales tax reports to come to get a little more fine tuning. And
Dolores, they have until the end of this month to do their first quarter business license, right?
Thank you.
All right. Community development. Actually, no, public safety.
Well, we have that.
I know Bruce liked to take them out of order, but I'll stay with the script.
Hello. The police department received roughly $34,000 in AB 109 realignment fees. We shared $68,000 with Fort Bragg. It's an annual thing, and last year I think it was $16,000 apiece. So we'll be able to spend that on anti-gang and at-risk youth programs. We still have 4 people in.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Scott,
sir.
before you go off of that, you mentioned gang. And I've seen some graffiti around town. And I don't know if that's your bailiwick or whose, but I've noticed some graffiti at certain parts of town that have been there for a while, and there was a time when somebody would jump on it right away. Are you aware of?
Well, I'm aware of efforts to remove the graffiti. John Sherman can provide an
Okay.
answer, a response to that.
You mentioned the word gangs, that's why I
Right.
jumped in on that. Well, thank you.
We do training in schools, presentations. We involve an officer in the gang task force, and that's the type of things that this money is spent on, training, things like that. We still have 4 people in background. The backgrounds, because the post regulations take quite a while and quite a bit of effort to hire the right people. Some of those positions are reserve positions, and some of them are regular positions. We expect to have several of them done within the next few weeks, I hope. And then we'll put them into field training with our field training officers. Karen wanted to present this. We have a career day coming up at Willits High School where the city of Willits is going to be represented, the city of Willits Police Department is going to be represented, and the fire department is going to be represented. And we're going to talk to the high school kids about careers in these fields and what they need to do to prepare themselves for, if they desire a career or are interested, we'll talk to them about what it entails. And the Justice Center just passed the sprinkler system test that WIP Construction completed, and they're going to send the information to Mr. Sherman. And that's all I have. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I wanted to say that you have many of your officers here earlier in the meeting, and I wanted to thank them all for their service, and the ones that were here and the others, because I think I've heard virtually, unanimous appreciation of how the police force in this city behaves and handles their responsibilities. And I wanted to do it while they were here, but there wasn't a moment. So please pass that on.
Thank you, I will. I had no idea they were going to be here, so they surprised me.
I think they were here in solidarity with you, with you becoming their chief. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Community development.
Building permits are starting to pick back up, so as we come out of the winter, it just got to stop raining. We start getting something done here. Accessible features throughout our business community are starting to be performed. I think, honestly, our business community really needs to be commended for the action that they're taking. It's obvious that they want to send the message that we're not just friendly, but we want to be accommodating to those people with disabilities. And whatever the disability is, we want to make sure that we accommodate their access. Code enforcement's been relatively quiet. I want to apologize for some of the graffiti. I've been real busy with some other projects and haven't had the time to just go out and hands-on take some of that off. A lot of times too, that's the responsibility of the property owner. For example, there was some stuff on some switchgear cabinets for traffic lights and for the train signals, and just simply a phone call to each one of those organizations, and the following day somebody was out dealing with it. So it's really just a matter of, I haven't devoted a lot of attention to it recently, but we'll get it taken care of.
My only concern was, years ago, there was a real concern about getting rid of it quickly, because that kind of sets a pattern. If you leave it on too long, then it becomes a fact.
That's absolutely true.
So,
and our policy has always been 48 hours.
Are we seeing that in town? Maybe I should have asked you, Scott. Gang activity.
Honestly, I can't speak to the gang activity, but I can speak to the graffiti. And we live in a blessed world. When you leave Willits and you go to other towns, you find out that they have a hell of a lot more trouble with this than we do. I think some of it has to do with being vigilant and going out there and getting rid of it right away. But also some of it has to do with the makeup of our community. And we just simply have a better class of people here.
Well, look at the skate park. I think that's a good example.
The only other thing I have to mention here is that we've received approval of all the insurance carriers for the damage that happened at the rodeo grounds, and the work has already started. They've pulled out a lot of the obstacles that are in the way of making the repairs and started to do some grading to accommodate the new accessibility features that are going to go along with the grandstand repair. It's been frustrating dealing with the insurance adjuster, not with Reno. But the insurance adjuster, he's got his job to do too, and he's just been very, very careful, and I appreciate that at this end, although it has been frustrating to be able to call Willits Frontier Days and say, you've got to go, we're gonna get the money. We've sort of been on the edge of doing that a few times and had to pull back. At this point, it's happened. I've received the approvals. I know we're going to get the funding, and the work started. So.
I have one question. You probably said this last time, but the timeline on the floodplain, what do you call it? You know.
Firm bounds.
They haven't been willing to give me an estimate.
Okay. So, but in the meantime, it's not operative, it's just a draft still.
We have existing adopted floodplain maps, and we use those until we adopt a new set. So the floodplain maps that we use right now were issued and approved in 2011. And if we had gone through and we hadn't seen the errors and asked them to revise their figures, then we would be dealing with the new maps, 2016 maps. I think, I really think it was a very sharp move on the part of the council to take a look at this and say, wait a minute, this is way too much change to make sense. We've got to question this change, because there were valid questions, there were mistakes made. When we had the study done by our own people and looked at the calculations that resulted in the revision of the floodplain, we found some pretty drastic calculation errors.
But there's no timeline for when FEMA is going to come back with a modified or not modified.
I've asked for that, and they've said we're not ready to give you that yet.
Okay.
So, but they have mentioned to us that they are in the process of revising.
John, I just want to thank you for your hard work all the time, but the rodeo grounds, the repair to the grandstands has been a huge unexpected project, and it's taken up a lot of city time, not only with John, but with our engineering department and, myself and Kathy. And it's, we have persevered and pushed hard to make sure that we don't have a hiccup in Frontier Days and their activities this year. And so, John, you have taken the lead on that, and I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you. But it's actually been kind of fun working with this and working with Marcy. I've not had much contact with Willits Frontier Days up until this issue, and they're a great bunch of people. They're the kind of people that we want to be.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Trustee Dion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just thought of something I probably should have addressed to you during your section. Can I go there, or you want to talk to Dusty first?
Go ahead.
I've heard stories about the hometown fair that's coming up. And some people in the community are worried that the businesses are going to be left out. There's all kinds of tales floating around. There was a story in the newspaper last week that kind of cleared it up in my mind, that that's not going to happen. There's going to be the bands, the food, the whole bit, but we're still hearing reports that that's not going to happen. Do we know?
I have not heard that, other than you had asked me about it. I've talked with a couple business owners directly when they had some misinformation or misconception about what the city would allow and not allow, and clarified that, and so they were very happy that things will continue as they always have been. The change that's taken place this year is the Chamber of Commerce has always coordinated that hometown celebration that happens typically twice a year. With Lynn Kennelly's unfortunate passing last November, it's left the chamber without an executive director still. They're looking for a new director, but they don't have that person yet. And so everyone else, that's on the board, they're, many of them work, or they are, they have some of the retired people that are board members going in and helping answer phones, but that is a huge event to undertake, and so they reached out to Frontier Days Association this year and asked if they could take it on this year. So it's my understanding that it's just this year that the Frontier Days Association is doing it, and I talked with Marcy. It was not something that they invited because they're also getting ready for their events, but in recognition that one of their partners in the community was needing some help, they stepped up. I don't know who the point people are in particular and what might be going on there. Just know that Frontier Days is the one that's coordinating it this year, and if any businesses have any concerns, they should either contact Frontier Days directly or contact the chamber directly.
We did have that conversation, I understand completely, and I think the newspaper article cleared it up for me, but I just heard this morning from a local business owner who had a whole different story, and this person was saying that they tried to contact Frontier Days, they never returned their calls, and they're starting to think about having to organize a parallel thing or something. It sounds like something's falling apart here, and I don't know what our role, the city's role is in this thing, but it's an important thing for our city, obviously, and this one is going to be on the 4th of July weekend, which is a pretty significant thing, especially given what we were just talking about with the local business climate. And I'm just wondering if somehow somebody can reach out and kind of get these parties together and, get a statement or something.
Well, I don't think it would be inappropriate for any council member to reach out. We don't, the city isn't in control of that.
Yeah.
I totally agree that we don't want to see it fail, and we want to see it be
We want to be
continued.
supportive of it.
Right.
Yeah, of course. So, I don't know, does anybody have any suggestions on how we can deal with this? Because I'm getting a little concerned.
Well, I guess I haven't heard that. I knew that Frontier Days had stepped up, but that was it. And so, I don't know who this business person is. I don't want you to out him here, or him or her, but maybe you could reach out and just tell them to get a hold of Marcy. But
Well, apparently she tried, and this person tried and was unsuccessful, so,
I would suggest reaching out to the chamber, one of the board members.
okay.
Yeah.
And if you want me to help, I had pretty good luck talking to Marcy, so if you want to email me who they need to get a hold of, I'll reach out and talk to Marcy.
Okay, I'll send you an email.
Okay. Need anything to keep this happening? Dusty, jump on up there, buddy.
Good evening, council members. Mayor Gonzalez, Dusty Dooley, city planner. Just brief, actually, congratulations, Mr. Warnock, on being appointed chief of police. And it was very cool to see all your compadres come in support of you. Actually, when I became city planner, the entire community development department came to the meeting. So, thank you, John. You're my favorite colleague in the community development department. I had hoped to have the housing element and associated zoning code changes that were identified in the previous housing element update for you today. Unfortunately, after I reported out the last meeting, the consultants let me know that they were unable to attend tonight. And so we do have that item scheduled for our next meeting on the 26th. We also have the vacant commercial building ordinance ready for you as well. And that got the blessing unanimously from the Revite Ed Committee to bring that forward. I'd like to try to bring the housing element and first stab at the cannabis ordinance first. Quick update on the cannabis ordinance. Staff's working diligently to get a draft together. We'll be letting the ad hoc committee take a look at that first. Actually, maybe even our city attorney getting the first look at it. And then after that, taken a page out of Councilmember Ornstein's book and actually having a public forum to review that first draft prior to bringing it to the council. So vet it with the community a little bit, probably make some revisions based on that meeting, and then bring it to the full council, and that might be a smarter way to go about it. Intern. We received, I mentioned before that we're looking for some help, some free help. And we put out a job opportunity for an intern, a planning intern. We had one person apply. And so I like his odds against the competition. That might only be, maybe a 2 or 3 month position. It looks like it's somebody that's going to school currently and maybe could help out in the summer months when the university's not in session. Been working with Caltrans on a number of items. Recently found out that they're willing to install conduit on both sides of the roads under the sidewalk. Again, we reported out on this before, the idea of, since we're ripping up the roads, and that's typically the big cost associated with putting conduit in the ground, why don't we take advantage of that situation, put it in, and in case we get someone that wants to make use of it in the future, it provides an opportunity to get some high-speed internet to the city, and that can create a lot of economic benefits and certainly attract visitors and those maybe thinking to move into our community or maintain those that are already here. So I'm also trying to find somebody that can maybe help answer a few questions on the design of that system. For instance, I understand there's some boxes that can go at key intersections so that we can shoot broadband down other side streets and not just have it on Main Street. Followed a couple leads. The first lead said, sure, I'd love to help you. You got $10,000. And the second lead didn't pan out as well. So if there's anyone out there that has some experience, knowledge on designing, I guess, broadband systems, I'll say, please give me a call. And I think I have some just basic questions that I'd like to get some answers to and help Caltrans design something for us. But
have you reached out to these guys in the county who were trying to get the broadband in the county?
Actually, I have, and I actually even recently today reached out to another one who apparently had moved to Oregon, so I'm trying to track that person down. So working with the Broadband Alliance to identify folks, and as they feed me leads, we're following in on those. But I wanted to mention that tonight because the last lead I had actually fell out earlier this afternoon. But the good news is we are going to get something, and I feel positive about that. You might notice that there's some additional signage on the bypass exits coming back into town today. I noticed that it now has additional directional signs for Willits and Highway 20 Fort Bragg and provides distances. I think one's 1 mile, the other's 3 miles. So that is something that we'd specifically requested and we got. I understand we'll be getting additional signage in the next few weeks, including the logo signs. We've talked about those at maybe nauseum in the past. And they're going to put some up at the northern interchange, not just the southern interchange. I immediately shared that update with the Chamber of Commerce and some of our business leaders, and they've been able to disseminate it out. I do want to make sure that people take advantage of that. I think the city and many others have reminded Caltrans, and I don't want to say fought, but have articulated our position that we should have those opportunities for local business owners, and I'd hate for local business owners to not take advantage of that and to just have empty signs. So if you're a gas station, if you're a lodging business, possibly even a food establishment, I think there's been many emails that have gone out. Our local newspapers have done a good job of disseminating information. If you're still having troubles figuring out how that works, I'm a resource for you as well. As is the Chamber of Commerce and others. Still working on a civic billboard. We potentially have a willing landowner that's willing to share some of his property for that to happen. Spoken to Caltrans. Depending on what the billboard says and looks like, they may be willing to waive their permit fees and requirements. So that was another positive conversation with our partners at Caltrans. And yeah, I've gotten a couple calls from folks that have appeared to represent the hometown event, been able to answer their questions and offer our support any way that we can. And as far as I know, everything's expected to go on as it always has. So, but again, if there's anything I can do to help with that, folks should let me know.
Thanks,
The water's still going, right?
What's that?
On the street, the water's still
Yes,
going
and we
down the
still
street?
have been told that we will have irrigation lines under both sides of the sidewalk,
Thank you.
right next to our broadband conduit. Yeah.
Before we move off of community development as a whole, and with Karen not here tonight, I just wanted to mention that we are putting together a job description for a grants coordinator or manager position that we'll be bringing to the council through the budget process. We leave a lot of money on the table out there. We have a number of grants that basically are in a regular cycle with us, whether it be with our police department or airport but there are grants in every possible area that we could pursue, and we don't have the internal resources to do that. And I believe that a good grants person will more than pay for their salary. And so it's something that we plan to bring to you in the near future.
Could I tag on to that too, and just say we recently had our airport layout plan adopted. We've got our Main Street plan, our streets and alley plan, amongst others. And that really puts us in a position to be grant ready. And that when you have those plans set up and you've identified and vetted it with the council and the community, that really puts you in a good position to go after that grant money.
If you're interested, if you ever go to Fort Bragg, they have 2 grant writers that are paid by the TOT, and you can't believe that the stuff that they get over there just because of the grant writing. And so I wholeheartedly say that Adrian, with this, is really a positive thing that we really need to look at as a community.
I agree.
Thanks, Dusty.
Great job.
Hey, thanks for both you and John. I know you guys are kind of
So
shorthanded.
did you say that both the housing element and the vacant commercial buildings will come to our next meeting? And then-
No, I'm
You're not
trying
sure?
to phase it in and not give you too much at a time. So my goal is to bring the vacancy to you after you've had a chance to do the housing element and the cannabis, at least a first review of the cannabis deal. Yeah.
All right.
If I got my priorities wrong, just let Adrian know.
It's all good.
All right. Anything from Public Works and Engineering you want to run?
Yes. Let's see, so the flushing program should be completed next week. The flashboards, we got approval to put those up early, and so those were actually installed on March 23rd, the day after, I think that was the day after our last council meeting. Those are the only reports I got from departments that are not here tonight.
Okay. All right, City Council and Committee reports, League of Cities. So number one, League of Cities sent us a letter here if you're interested in serving on the 2017-2018 League Board of Directors to be an elected official. I'll leave this with Adrian in case anybody's interested in that. Oh, did you? Okay, I wasn't sure. All right. And speaking of League of Cities, and I think we'll cover it, well, they have not met since I last reported, but there was an action alert. Apparently, AB 1250, sponsored by Jones and Sayer, apparently it's a de facto ban on local government contracts. Apparently make it really difficult for local governments in their contracting. And I think I forwarded it to Adrian, and if she could forward it to all of you, but I really think the league is asking for basically a support letter against this bill, because it's not good for us. Probably would affect school districts too, local agencies. So I'm looking for a consensus from the council to allow me to sign a letter on behalf of the city of Willits opposing this AB 1250.
Yeah, that works for me.
I mean, anything that makes it more difficult, so.
I agree. Do you need a motion on that?
Do we need a motion or just
I think
consensus?
just the consensus.
All right. So-
I just wanted to read the first bullet point that they have concerning this bill. If it passed, it would require a city, before entering a contract or renewing a contract, to perform a full economic analysis of the potential impacts of outsourcing, including the impact on local businesses if consumer spending power is reduced. And so it puts quite a burden on the local government or local public entity.
So the purpose of that is for the local jurisdiction to prove that they're better off going out instead of doing it in-house? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that wasn't quite my read on it. So if you're going to contract something out, then you need to go through this full analysis of impacts as part of your process before you put out the bid for proposals.
Duh. Seriously? That's weird.
And they have several other things, but
It's like the local jurisdictions aren't smart enough to figure that out themselves.
it eliminates local agency hiring discretion by limiting local agencies' ability to utilize a contract for the sole purpose of cost savings through salaries and benefits. It forces the city to conduct an annual audit of each contract. Mandates the city to conduct a full environmental impact analysis caused by contracting for the services. It's very, very onerous.
Jeez, that's a friendly legislator, isn't it?
Yeah, so the League of Cities has taken a strong
Yeah.
position of opposition on this, and they're
They'll write a
seeking
letter.
letters
Yeah,
to
they-
support that
so
position.
I'll work with Adrian and get a letter on, but they want it by April 19th, so they could, and you know what the league basically told me is, Sarah Rounds had said that it sends a powerful message when all the cities
Yeah.
said, it's one thing for us to say, yeah, just Willits, but it's when they literally show up to the legislatures with a list of, oh yeah, here's a list of all these cities, and oh, here's their letters. And there are some that kind of go, oh, really? And so it does have a big effect, so.
Okay.
All right, MEMCOG, Larry.
We had the meeting on yesterday, and it was an all-day thing, and we went around to all the different things in Fort Bragg, and I was really surprised at all the things that I knew that Dan had got a lot of things in, but I just couldn't believe the charging station is something that we're gonna get and that they're gonna do theirs in 2 or 3 different places. And I do not know where ours is going to be, but they're not the fast chargers because of the amount of electricity that we get. Is that correct, John? Yeah, but we will have some. The trail, the North Trail head that starts and goes through Glass Beach. There's another one that Pudding Creek that starts the old Hall Road. They have a safe way to school for the students there. They took and redid their traffic pattern and made a 4-foot sidewalk for the 3 schools, which is a high school and a couple of elementary schools that are up in the east side of the community, and which is really going to be a neat thing. The Noyo Harbor access is another thing that is going on. And I don't know how many of you know, maybe Adrian knows from being in Fort Bragg area, but does anybody know where the original Highway 1 went? The original in Fort Bragg? Has anybody been down to the wharf?
Oh, the one
That
where
was
the-
one. That was Highway 1.
Really?
And if you look at the buildings, when you go through, there's 2 buildings that have the pictures of the wooden bridges and stuff that were there that lasted 3 to 5 years, and still they were washed out. So if you ever go down there again, stop. There's a printing building that has 2 pretty good sized murals of it, and then another one at one of the other places.
That was before the big bridge that's there now, right?
Oh, yeah, this was original, this was a dirt thing originally, and it was just surprising to me. And the pictures are really worth watching, I think, or seeing. The coastal trail starting at Cypress or ending at Cypress, depending on where you want to be. Chestnut Street, which is another safe route to school. The one thing that really interests me was the green alley. And what that is a paver alley that they did in Fort Bragg, and it runs a block, really expensive, double of what the price is to pave it. But the water, it just sucks the water down and really is, you need to see it. If I can tell you how to get there if you're interested, but it's an excellent thing that you want to go and look at. And the coastal trails, the meeting was really, I thought, excellent as far as seeing what a community can do. And like I mentioned when I talked when Dusty was up, to have somebody on staff that does the projects and be able to get the money to do these things just is a tremendous amount of positive for the community, and we really need to do that. And also the new, what do you call it now, the transportation bill, I guess, to fill the potholes and new transportation, MTA and all the other, which is our local thing, but the mass transit and whatever. The Mendocino County is going to come up with some real money over the next 10 years, and we certainly need somebody to go down to the MCOG staff meeting, which is before the directors meet once a month, and we definitely have to make sure that somebody is there to start figuring out and coming up with some kind of money that the city of Willits can get, and but there's some real money that's going to be coming into Mendocino County, so we need to do that. But the meeting was just very good, very well attended, and we had a travel around to all of these different places. The wind was blowing so hard out on the coast that is all you could do to stand. We got through and went into Fort Bragg, into GP property right out by the bluffs, I guess, and it was blowing so bad that you had to stand in a group, or it was really going. Anyhow, but it was just a really nice thing, and lasted all day, and very enjoyable. Thank you.
You mentioned the charging stations at the slow chargers here in Willits.
Yes.
Which is probably a good thing, because people can go shopping while their cars are charging.
Well, but we need, and I don't know how much we've done with that, but we need places, different places where they can go and charge, not just all of them at one spot. Kind of, how many, do we have 3? Is that what we have? Or do you know, John?
I didn't understand the question.
The charging station, do we have 3?
I'm only aware of one so far.
Okay, we have a couple, 2 or 3, I think, that's coming.
I think I had heard 3 the last time we talked.
Yeah,
We were gonna get 3.
And we need to put them someplace that, not just all at one spot.
The one I've heard of specifically will be going on the east side of the road next to the Willits Arch.
Yeah. Anyhow, we need to keep abreast of that one, I think. Especially since Tesla is number 2 or number 3 money-wise in cars.
That's the fast charger.
Huh?
That's the fast charger.
Yeah, that's but apparently, the people put those on their Google Maps,
Oh, yeah.
etc. So if you're shopping,
Yeah.
and you gotta do that, so.
No, we've talked not only amongst ourselves, but also with the different other agencies that are players in this about where they would possibly be located, and we do want to have them throughout town. So locations that have been discussed would be the Skunk Train parking lot, Wood Street parking lot, close to where the arch is, and then I don't think we've really determined a south of town location yet. But these were all with the idea of placing them on city-owned property. And so there's really nothing to prevent a private property owner from having one installed.
Yeah, we want to encourage people to stick around while they're charging their cars and spend some money in town.
But you need different types of chargers because, like Tesla, theirs is exclusive for their vehicles.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought it was a generic
I
one.
think it still is, isn't it? Sure.
Something I apologize for letting this slip my mind. A gentleman that owns a solar panel installation company in Sonoma County that's a longtime Willits resident. He's actually the guy that installed the electric charging station on City Hall here. He's proposing to donate, and I believe it's 11,000 kW or 11 kW solar panel system for the roof of City Hall. And it's not a situation where we're gonna share the revenues with him or anything else. It's a gift. And his name is John Takes. He lives
Right next door to me.
next door to Ron, and he's a great guy. And I'm stunned that somebody would just give me a call one day and say, how would you like a big PV solar system on City Hall?
He wants to establish himself here in Willits.
Well,
He's moving up here.
He's made a damn good inroad.
Yeah, so I would certainly take advantage of that offer for damn sure.
We are.
Good.
Yeah, and like I said, I apologize, I didn't come up and, but,
Ukiah has the fast stations.
Fast charging.
They're down there by,
The conference center.
yeah, and they're Teslas. Or that's the
Yeah.
thing on, and there's 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, they have several different types of charging stations there.
you know, this is the future. It's, we've always been a leader in alternative energy in the city of Willits, and I think this is a chance for us to step up again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Did you want to add anything? Okay. All right. You got anything more, Larry, and Epcot?
No, thank
All right.
you very much, Gary.
All right, EDFC.
I just got a notice today that John Curry, the executive director, is resigning, so they'll be getting a new executive director. I had mentioned at the last meeting that there was money out there that was available for small businesses for loans. As a result, a small business did reach out to me. We talked about the loans process. I went through the online application myself to see whether or not it was easy to use, and I found it very user-friendly. And I'm hoping that more people who may need funds to grow their business in Willits will reach out and look into their services.
Do you know where John is going?
Yes, I do. Redwood,
Mendocino Redwood Company.
yes.
Oh. Adrian said Mendocino Redwood Company, is that?
Yeah, Mendocino Redwood Company.
Really?
All right.
Jeez, you
Yeah.
started out with a brewery. I think.
Yeah.
It'll be the asset manager.
So do you have another candidate in mind, or are you still?
We just got his letter today.
So he will stay around for a process of.
It's
kind of-
effective May 1st, his
That's not
resignation.
Very much time.
No.
MSWA.
I sat in an MSWA for Madge last week, and I forgot to bring my notes with me, but a couple of things that, I guess the one notable thing that happened was, what's her name?
Yeah,
Good, I'm
Louisa
glad you're
Morris.
forgetting.
Louisa
Yeah,
Morris.
the current director, Louisa Morris, has reiterated that she is going to stay on, and we voted on it, and we approved it unanimously, and we're very happy for that. In conjunction with other than that, there wasn't a whole lot happening, but in conjunction with the MSWA, we have the solid waste of Willits issue. You had mentioned at 2 meetings ago, I believe, that some of your constituents reported to you that they didn't have a pickup, I think, of the recyclables.
Due to driver shortage.
Well, yeah. I had 2 recyclable cycles missed, and then last week the yard waste was not picked up. And when we called to find out, and I contacted Adrian about this, when we called to find out, we were told that solid waste has decided that they were only going to pick up yard waste every other week instead of every week. Now, the contract, the 15-year contract that we signed with solid waste 2 years ago specifically states that they will pick up the yard waste every week. And the reason for that is because the yard waste is not just yard waste anymore, it's garbage. It's food waste. And it's the kind of thing that you don't want sitting around your backyard with maggots and flies and things.
Especially in the summer.
For 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. So, we have to jerk their chain a little bit.
Well, and I do have, I did reach out to Jerry. I've not heard back from him yet. So
Yeah.
I will report back to you as soon as I hear from him.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard, actually, I spoke to him after you mentioned that we were down at the Brown Act thing, and I told him about that. And he said he's gonna check into that. And I said, I understand you're shorthanded. He says, yeah, I have to drive a truck myself, but we're okay now. That's what he said to me. So that should not be an excuse. So,
I did talk to him, and I don't know what cycle, they'd hired some, lost some, and I know that one of the issues was new drivers in training, you know,
Okay.
one of those things, so.
but you know, bottom line is, that's his problem.
Yeah.
He has an obligation to the city. He wanted a 15-year contract so he could have financial stability, and we gave him that. Now, he has to live up to his part of the contract. And something like this, as far as I'm concerned, this is real serious. I don't want garbage sitting around for 2 weeks.
And there are also weeks when you really actually have enough green waste even without the garbage, but, you know, it fills up, so.
Yeah.
And you don't have to put it out if you don't have enough, so.
Yeah.
But it is part of their obligation under the contract, so I totally agree with that.
That's my report.
Okay. MTA.
That's me. So I had the pleasure of serving on the MTA board. I was able to advocate for the Willits MTA transportation. One of the things that they ask you at the meeting is, are there any transportation needs not being met in Willits? And I have to say that I have not heard from anybody in the city of Willits in regards to MTA about additional services needed. So if there are people in the community that have concerns, I'd like them to reach out to me and let me know so that I can advocate for them. The senior center, when I took a tour of the senior center, they did express to me that they were receiving approximately $99,000 from MTA for transportation purposes, but they were running a shortfall of about $6,000. So when I was at the meeting, I said, how did you come about this pot of money? And it was determined that 20 years ago, that 3 people went into a room and they decided that this was how they were going to divide the pot. The pot of money hasn't changed. It's still the same. It's just a matter of maybe coming up with some rules and guidelines on how it should be distributed. I believe, after talking to the senior center, that the Willits Senior Center, that our Willits Senior Center is providing a lot of transportation services, as well as other services, more services than maybe other senior centers in our county. And so I'll be advocating further on their part to at least get them to where they don't have a deficit in terms of funding that they're getting specifically for transportation. And then the other exciting news for MTA, it still has to go before MCOG, is that they have plans to upgrade the technology in all of their buses. What that means to you and I is that when you're waiting for a bus, you'll be able to download an app and it'll tell you the exact time that your bus is going to arrive, if your bus is late, if your bus is going to be early. It'll give you all kinds of route information. MTA's had a lot of problems with their schedules, particularly over in the Fort Bragg area, not being posted at all, being inaccurate, so they pulled all of them. We haven't had that problem here in the Willits and Ukiah area, but excited about the technology. And that's it.
LAFCO. LAFCO met, and we had a workshop on the Russian River Flood Control District, and it'll come back for a vote on May 1st. And Anderson Valley Community Service District is coming back, and they changed. They were going to do a merger with the fire department as far as their ambulance, but it sounds like they're better off not doing that and doing something a little different. Let's see. And the cemetery district MSRs were passed. They'd been held over because there were some questions regarding whether or not the cemetery districts could get some help with filing their audits through the county. And it sounds like they have to go back. I guess our concern was that it was kind of an onerous burden on these small districts that barely have any money to have to hire a CPA to do these audits. And we were hoping maybe the county could help, because I guess they can, under the government code, they can do one every so often as opposed to, going every year, et cetera. But it sounds like it's the law, and I think the direction was that we go to Cal LAFCO and kind of press the issue for the small guys, because it's not easy for, I think our local cemetery district may only have 3 members on it, and they're appointed by the Board of Supes, and a lot of times they're volunteers. They're folks that were asked to join just so they could fill a board seat, and they've stepped up, but a lot of them don't have the time to go out and do bids on CPAs to run their audits. So, and they don't have a lot of money that's changing hands. That's the other concern. So, and our budget for LAFCO is again coming back on May 1st. So that's it. And Finance Committee met, and we discussed the investment policy that you all saw tonight. And Water and Wastewater Systems Committee has not met, right?
No, they are scheduled to meet, I think next week.
And I don't think we have a Rewrite Ed meeting scheduled yet, do we?
April 18th.
April 18th, okay.
We're talking about the civic billboard location and design.
Okay. Ad hoc committee, Caltrans, I don't think is met. Our cannabis, I don't think we've officially met, but we went on our field trip.
And I forgot to report on that.
Yeah, the Dusty and John, Chief Warnock and myself all visited a facility an indoor grow facility down in San Francisco that apparently is permitted by the city and county of San Francisco. And I know that they also had a distribution center there where apparently some folks in the tech industry wrote an app so that if you can order your medical cannabis and then this company delivers it. They're co-located at the same place as the indoor grow as we, and I frankly wasn't paying attention. What's the neighborhood there that we went through in that area? And they, I think the comment I would say, the place we visited did an excellent job at controlling odor off-site. I mean, you literally opened the door, then it got you, but I couldn't smell it from the street. Yet, as we drove through this neighborhood, and we learned after we got there that this is kind of an area where these businesses are permitted, and sounds like San Francisco's still dialing in their odor ordinances, because you could smell the competition in the area, and those other folks weren't doing a good job. Scott?
Yeah, there was about 25 permitted ones there, but there were also about a total of 44. So some of the smells could have been from the ones that weren't permitted, that are illegal grows.
But again, what was impressive, because that was a big concern as we move forward with this, could we adequately control offsite odor? Because not only do I not want to smell it next to my house, but obviously if a place is located near a sensitive place like the hospital or something, we don't want those places being able to tell what's there and the general public to smell, or we don't want the town to smell like those skunk statues we want to put up. So that's what I've got, and then we'll set, I guess Dusty will be pulled so we can set up a of an ad hoc meeting, so.
Can I segue onto that as well? I was reached out to, yeah, that's a sentence, by Alan Filari, who put me in touch, who brought to my house Micah, what's his name, who wants to operate the thing on North Lenore Street, and he brought Dr. Bowell. I should have brought his card. I'm not prepared today, but anyway, this fella has created a process for purifying the cannabis into the oils. And the reason he wanted to talk to me was Micah was in the audience the last time we talked about this, and we talked about the volatiles versus the non-volatiles. And we had someone stand up and said, you have to do the volatiles because it's the only way to do it, blah, blah, blah. So this guy wanted to show me, what the truth of the matter is, and the fact is, with volatiles, you actually have impurities that are introduced into the oil. And the non-volatiles, which is CO2, and it's very safe and it works well. And he's got a nice business that he started, so that's another resource to draw on. Have you met with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yet, at the same, we spoke with an industry representative, Felipe, I can't remember his last name. And he's definitely a true believer in that, and he was lobbying heavy for allowing volatiles and went into explaining that. We also did speak with the folks when we went on our field trip to Santa Rosa, and they were also for it, but apparently Santa Rosa had chosen, because they're just setting up their ordinance, not to allow volatiles initially. And the folks in Santa Rosa were pretty much, we've got our permit for what we're doing right now. While we may want volatiles, we stand ready to go that route when the city is ready to go that route.
Well, I think the thing we need to be aware of is that volatiles, as I said, do introduce impurities. The reason they want volatiles is it's cheaper. It costs less to do it that way, which is fine for the business, but if we want to stand behind a pure organic product, if it's going to be branded coming from our town, I think that's important that we consider these things.
So,
Yeah, we'll have an ad hoc committee, I guess, before the public version. But I think I'd like to put a word in that I like what the county has done, where if they're going to call it made in Willits, that we have certain standards for impurities and whatnot. So I don't know how to enforce that, but I think it would be good to be known as a product that's very clean and organic if it's going to be called.
And this is coming from the producers who are really vested in making this a real quality product.
Yeah.
They can be proud of.
Yeah, there will undoubtedly be legal operations going on, and all of that will still happen regardless of what we do. But when we're putting our permit process together on this, I'd like our process to be something we can be proud of.
Absolutely, and I can't believe that I'm actually having this conversation today. I mean, 2 years ago, I probably would have.
well, believe me, when.
Yeah, right. I remember talking to you about this several years ago, about opening up something that's guarded by the police, and you looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah, between the place in Santa Rosa and this place we went to, definitely the paradigm has shifted a little bit as far as, obviously, the folks that we've spoken with are trying to work within the rules that the cities have placed in. Obviously, and they were all quick to point out that at a greater expense, they're playing by the rules, and that there will be folks out there not playing by the rules that we as cities or counties will have to deal with as nuisances. And both, I think, places we visited on these field trips have welcomed that aspect of us going after those folks, because I think they feel if we're playing by the rules and we're paying all the fees and we're doing it right, you should go after those folks that are doing it illegally, and we fully support you going after them, because we have to pay, so they should have to pay, which I thought was kind of a good attitude. so. All right, and JPA feasibility study for WWTP, I don't think is met, so council member reports and recommendations.
Can I do the museum
Oh,
advisory? It's not listed
Oh,
on
sorry.
there,
Go
but it's
ahead.
actually one of ours.
we should list that.
Yeah, I
Go
serve on the Museum Advisory Board, and I promised them that I would bring this up and remind everybody that the Museum Roadshow is still busy. The next time that you can see them is Saturday, April 15th, 2 o'clock, or a 7:30 show in Ukiah at Mendocino College. And then they also have an exhibit on hand at the museum. If you haven't seen it, it's called The Second Shift, 100 Years of Housework. It's really interesting and fun. And then on Saturday, June 10th, the museum will unveil a new exhibit called Then and Now, the Transformation of Main Street. And they are hoping that the city and the businesses in the community will all get involved in this particular exhibit. They want to take it outside of just a museum, but really all the downtown area, and get business owners and individuals involved. And so they're asking for participation in the way of maybe decorating your window in conjunction with the theme that the museum will have, and lots of other ideas. I'll have more to bring to you at the next meeting, but I'm excited about the Then and Now show.
The road show is amazing. We
And the
saw
road
it.
show.
I've seen it every year that they put it on, and we were there Saturday at the high school. Did you see it?
I wanted to, but unfortunately.
Yeah. It's well worth it. I mean, it's great historically, it's very entertaining. Yeah, John was there.
They're hoping to go to the one in Ukiah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now we're, item 11, city's transmittal of letters support for AB 1470, and I apologize to the council, but because of the time element involved, I spoke with Adrian, and they really wanted to send a letter with the mayor on there, and we figured we'd report out there. I figured none of you would be against something that hopefully would help our local businesses, so Adrian, if you'd like to.
Sure. So we don't have any report on the outcome of this yet. We've been working with Ruth Valenzuela, who is Jim Wood's field rep, or district director, maybe. So he proposed this bill to aid Willits as the first recipient if it were passed, and then future cities or communities that have experienced a bypass and the impacts that they incur from that. It's a long shot, but they have not specified a dollar amount nor what the monies would be used for. I have received some inquiries from people wanting to know if it's a bailout for businesses. It is not. What this is intended for, and we've talked about several different ideas, is creating a grant program that businesses can access to make improvements, whether they're facade improvements or code improvements or some other improvement to their business that would just put them in a better position, as well as doing some sort of community project. And one of the ideas that we floated is making improvements to our ball fields, like putting in lights so that we could have nighttime games, and be in a better position to attract tournaments, which bring people in, for a whole weekend, and they stay here, they, shop here, they eat here. So it's a good economic boon when we can draw those activities in.
You ought to also consider the skate park tournaments there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when we built it years ago, skate park tournaments were a thing, a big deal, and I don't know if they still are, they might be. But that's certainly something to explore, because they're rabid fans.
So as Jerry said, Ruth contacted me, and she said, we need the letter now. And since it was something that we would benefit from, we didn't see high risk in the council not supporting that.
That's great to see that Representative Wood is taking this initiative. I mean, I don't know what to say, because we've never had this sort of thing, you know, a bill written for us. That's pretty amazing.
Well, and I gotta tell you, both he and McGuire's office, but Wood has really jumped on.
Yeah.
You know, Ruth and Jim both drove the bypass and were real quick at one of our early meetings to say, yeah, there's an issue here, and they've been really good about contacting Caltrans on our behalf, and
These have been two good representatives that we've had.
Absolutely.
Best.
so I'm really happy. And
Yeah. There's another idea that I've been sort of talking up and hopefully get some traction for, is to have some kind of artisan festival. And we have all sorts of wonderful makers of various things, jewelry and woodwork and pottery and paintings and you name it. We've got them in our larger community, and to have a festival that would feature them here could draw in really a lot of tourist interest, I think, plus our own, so that might be another thing that could help fund it.
Along that same line, we had a lady, I don't know how many meetings ago, that came up and talked to the council about everybody has some kind of a animal or some type of thing in their city, and she recommended that we do the skunk. And, you know, the more I've thought about that, I think maybe that's a really good idea, because that's unique for us. And, you know, I just think that we ought to start something like that. I mean, it's you know, I mean, it's something different that nobody else is gonna have.
no, I think everybody seemed pretty supportive. It's just
Yeah, I agree. I think the chamber needs to take the lead on it, and I think businesses in the community will be very supportive as well as individuals.
And obviously, as this unfolds, we'll see. You know what, in the end, if what we get is having Caltrans listen even more to us, then it's still a win. So I think that's how I look at it. And, you know, we're all suffering, not just Willits, but we're suffering obviously right now because we've been bypassed. But, you know, roads and all that, I mean, I think the newspapers have done a good job reporting out on SB1. While I'm not into paying for more fees and taxes, we have issues with our roads. You know, I mean, great that we'll get a new 101 from the 20 to the north end of town, but we still have our side streets. I mean, I think there've been comments about sidewalks and things, but Main Street belongs to Caltrans still, and there are issues there, but we have our own issues on our side streets, so.
Does anybody know when the bill, the road tax bill, that was signed, wasn't it?
It was signed by the governor. In fact, I've got something from the League of Cities and memo that I'll send out to everybody.
Yeah, so when does that kick in? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
It's gonna come in phases, and then it has to be dispersed. I know MCOG's gonna get a big chunk of money and have to figure out how it'll be distributed, so.
You know, and I know that was part of the opposition, that it wasn't just gonna be pavement. You know, we've had discussions, you guys have had, me, but it's how to spend our local tax money, but that was a big issue, and why there was some opposition, because not all the money is gonna go for pavement, it's gonna go for transportation projects, so. So, no ordinances, any good in welfare?
I have some. Well, I will be out of town, leaving Saturday and back in time before the next council meeting
But what for?
to go visit my new granddaughter that was born this morning.
Congratulations.
So it's been difficult to sort of keep my feet on the ground today.
You're still
Two
getting
granddaughters, or?
The second granddaughter, so second grandchild, and
You're
also
still coming to grips with the first one. You're still agog
she's a
over it.
pistol.
Congratulations.
So Kathy will be the point of contact in my absence, and she can contact me easily, but I'm, you know, staff knows to go through her to advise her of any issues going on, and then she'll be in contact with the mayor as necessary.
Right. Well, no closed sessions, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I so move.
Motion second. All right.